Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. It's noon-ish Eastern time, and I imagine we might have some folks coming in from different time zones. So it's so fascinating and remarkable to come together in this way, just from all corners of the planet, and be, virtually in the same space together. So thank you so much for coming. This is our Earth Day panel talk that Earthdance has organized to inspire and enliven a conversation around what our creative practices and our embodiment practices and our site responsive practices can offer as guidance for these very unusual, extreme circumstances that all of us are experiencing right now. The title is Performance Practices for a Precarious Planet. So we'll see all the different directions that might go in, and the themes that might emerge. So I'm really so honored and happy to be joined by these panelists, these 4 artists and teachers and performers who practice, who are doing incredible work. And 3 of them have come to Earthdance before and are connected through Peter Shosholi, actually, who's here with us today, and through the International Interdisciplinary Artist Consortium, a creative residency that's come to Earthdance for many years. So it's so cool to have these collaborative relationships continue to blossom. And our 4 people here today are Deborah Black and Sophia Treanor, who are going to be teaching teaching a Six Viewpoints Online Experiment in June. And we'll shoot the info about that through the chat at various points through this. And then also Esther Baker-Tarpaga and Deirdre M, who are going to be doing site responsive work, a listening and collaboration workshop online in May. So that's what we have to look forward to, and this conversation will hopefully give us all a taste of what that work is and how we can engage with it, even on a daily basis. And myself, Lindsay, and Brando, who's here, are going to be asking some questions, and then with about 15 minutes to the hour, we'll open it up for you all to also ask questions. So I think without further ado, I'll turn it over to the 4 of you to introduce yourselves a little bit and just share briefly what kind of work you do in the world, and also if you could maybe just say where you are in the world. Yeah, and we'll take it from there. Thanks.
I can go first. Hi, everyone. Nice to see you. Thank you, Earthdance, and Peter Shosholi also. Thank you so much for your support that you give to artists over the years. Earthdance has meant a great deal to me. So I'm Deborah Black, and I'm from rural Pennsylvania, but currently I'm in New York City. And yeah, I primarily work as a dancer, choreographer, theater maker. I'm also a writer and a teacher. And I've been focusing on the Six Viewpoints for a number of years. And I'm really happy that Sophia Treanor is joining me in my life, mostly in my life in this moment, and also as a collaborator and fellow Six Viewpointian hero. So maybe I'll just pass to Sophia.
Thank you so much for that. So happy to be joined with you in life now too. Yeah, I am so excited to be working with Earthdance. I'm the newbie here. And it's so I just feel so honored. So my name's Sophia Treanor. I am a performance maker, theater maker, dancer, writer, and I teach Six Viewpoints with Mary Overly, who's the founder of the Philosophy and Technique. I'm her assistant. And I also teach other embodiment practices for actors. And I'm also a biodynamic craniosacral practitioner. So those two backgrounds work really beautifully for me in questions about how our environment and perception can alter our consciousness. And maybe I'll pass it to you, Esther.
Hello, I'm Esther Baker-Tarpaga, dialing in from Lenape-Hoking, Philadelphia, South Philadelphia, near the Delaware River, second in Christian. And I'm at home with my kid and my partner. Thankful for my family and thankful for the Earthdance family and Peter, everybody who organized this. And I'm so happy to be here with Deirdre to talk about some of the work we're starting to do. And also my work is as a choreographer, performance artist. I'm doing a lot of site responsive performance work. And my main practice the past several years has been dancing outside just near the Delaware River in my neighborhood, this tiny little strip of land that's there in a very cement-full city. And I teach young people to elders, to university students, and I also work with our company, Baker-Tarpaga Dance Project, which is based in West Africa and the US. And also I'm a founding member of a Propelled Animals in Arts and Social Justice Collective that does site interdisciplinary collaboration. So thank you. Could you hear me? Okay.
I guess I'm the last here. I'm Deirdre Morris, coming to you from Northeast Connecticut, Nipmuc, Pequot land, and I'm gonna try and attempt to say that all in my grandmother's language, and I'm just learning this, so I ask for your forgiveness if this sounds kind of strange. So Kuwait. Min nune Deirdre Morris in Linyo Kene Nipmuc Pequot. Oh, that's hard. That's Mi'kmaq, that's my grandmother's language. So I'm in an area where I didn't grow up. I'm in a place where I was given a home to stay in for a while the quarantine was happening. And I'm very grateful for that home. It's my aunt's home. And just wanted to acknowledge that because she's not here anymore. She's in a nursing home. She has Alzheimer's and dementia. So she, before she left, told me that I could stay here if I needed to. And so it turned out that I did. Just wanted to do a shout out to my Aunt Berta. And I'm mainly at this point in my life, a producer and a director and dramaturge, I would say. I do a lot of writing and I do produce dance and dance making and theater practices. But I think that they've become more of a personal practice and less of an outward facing practice, although I have been recently publishing some land dances that I've been doing. So, and I spend a lot of time right now at a place called the Mashamwiquet Brook State Park, which is about 20 minutes from here. And it's a beautiful park that I walk through and do practices in there most days. I bring my big boots and I walk in the river and I listen to things and I make dances and I sing songs and I record stuff sometimes. So That's what I'm doing right now. And then some of you might know me as the former director of Earthdance. I was the ED there for a couple of years. And I also currently work with Dancing Earth, which is an Indigenous contemporary dance company. Really funny, right? The Dancing Earth dance. I thought that's great. And I work with an organization called IDOC-DE, which is based in Europe. It's the International Documentation of Contemporary Dance Education. Super grateful to be here. Thank you so much, Earthdance, for setting this up, and Lindsay in particular, and to Peter Shisholi for bringing us all together. Really looking forward to talking with y'all.
Wonderful, thank you. So to open it up, I wanted to ask, and we can just kind of go around and each of you can respond to the question of, you know, in these circumstances that have become so limiting for us, where is your creativity sort of sparking, and what is most alive for you in your practices?
I'll start, because I was just looking at my plants. I think for me, I'm like planting things. I was trying to seed just seeds I had, but I did go to the Home Depot and I was planting, and just that gave me such pleasure and joy. So I'm very thankful I have this very small space, and I'm just continuing to think of friends, and as Deirdre and I organize our workshop, people who are not able to go outside at all, and just connecting with plants or sprouting in their apartment, just how green is a space of healing for me, and grounding in to the bigger picture, and the birds still sing and the clouds are going by and it rains. So I think grounding into land and the earth and has been a place that my creative practice was, and now it's even more necessary, I think, to do. Pass.
Yeah, thank you for that question. Yeah, I feel like there's a period of adaptation that's happening. And Sophia and I have been talking a lot about the nervous system, and I'm sure that the nervous system will come up a lot in our responses. But, you know, coming into whatever, you know, this moment in time and these circumstances, I don't know that I really had the most regulated nervous system, and I've been working on it for a couple of years. And so that has been a lot of my work right now, is just to kind of check in with my body, with my nervous system, because I really don't think that anything else is possible beyond that. If we're dysregulated, it's very difficult to think about coming into a creative practice. And so I kind of decided to use that problem that I have to kind of flip, how could I flip that into my work? And I decided to offer a couple of open classes of the Six Viewpoints, mostly because it helps me to ground in my nervous system in addition to other practices that I have. And it's also been a great way for me to start to talk about how I think the Six Viewpoints is really good for our nervous systems. It's really grounding. It requires a lot of orienting, coming to the present, understanding what is true right now, what we have, you know, available to us, what we're connected to, even if we are feeling alone. And as an improviser and as an improvising teacher, it's my true confession, a lot of really interesting stuff starts to come when I enter into the space of teaching, and I stay present with myself and have the theory and the practice of the viewpoints to keep kind of sourcing through that. So I found the adaptation to my teaching in this moment and the content that I put into it to be one of my main creative practices. As we all have come upon sort of a great pile of time, potentially, some of us might be more busy than we used to, or some of us might be less. My other practice in terms of projects that I've already started, I'm writing a book, has been one of gentleness and of not pushing and not doing. And it's a practice that I always want to cultivate. And I feel like this moment in time has really allowed me the space to do that. And it can be really counterintuitive, but I feel like it's providing a really a new Esther was talking about soil, but it seems to be fertilizing my soil a little bit. I'm not sure that anything's growing out of it yet, but the gentleness and the care that I feel like I'm able to have in my own creative practice is creating potentially.
I'll jump in. Thanks, Deborah, for articulating something I haven't truly been able to articulate for myself. I really appreciate what you shared. And same thing, Esther. It feels like a planting time for sure. I mean, it's spring, and that metaphor is quite apt for how I'm experiencing the world. I have been focusing on my nervous system as well. It's just, what's up? You know, how could I not? It's so activated right now. And at first, just being in quarantine has been like a tuning into, like, there's so much tension at first, and noticing that, how that was showing up in myself when I wasn't even around people, and feeling this tension and like, what am I doing? What am I going to do with this? Like, what is this? So following the threads of where I feel connected, the most connected. And for me right now, the most connected is to the outside. So spending time outside every day has been helping to ground me as a practice. I too have other practices, but that's a main one right now. And I really find, like, being in the dirt and, like, truly, like, getting dirty and, like, taking my gloves off and sticking my hands in the dirt and, like, feeling the stones and, like, getting the water on my face from the river is doing something for me. It's grounding me in, like, a way that I is different from all the other times I go outside and do those things. So I'm super grateful for that. And that I have the capacities, the resources to be able to go and do that. A car to drive, a place to go to. I don't live in a city right now, and I'm feeling my friends in the cities right now and how frustrating it is for them to not have that resource. So part of my wanting to do this workshop with Esther is to give people that opportunity to maybe have an experience where they could touch into, you know, some more natural rhythms, because that seems to be a resource that's working for me, and I'd love to share it. The other thing is sharing some writing practices with people. I feel like we're so far away, but we're so close right now because we're all in the same, dealing with the same thing. Yeah. We're all in quarantine. So how do we utilize that to our advantage right now? And I don't have a lot of time. I'm not one of those people that's like, oh, I've got no work. I have tons of work, and actually got more so because everything had to go online and figuring out how to do that. So yeah, so some writing practices with people has been really great as well. I'm talking a lot. I'm gonna leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It is really beautiful to hear those answers. Partially because I feel like the adaptation period and finding ways to get regulated has taken so much attention, mixed with all of the correspondence that, for me, I've been in a lot of correspondence recently, and trying to feel connected to people, but not go into that like white static overwhelm that comes from screen and too much screen and information. So I really appreciate hearing what you've all been doing, because I feel for me that the most nourishment to my, feeling my creative force, even though I don't feel like I'm doing anything creative, really. Like, you know, that's definitely a judgment of my own. But that what feels nourishing is finding stillness and emptiness within myself, finding the nothingness that is becoming a little bit more available with this still moment, or at least, you know, at least physically more still. And then, yeah, listening to plants, really, really trying to absorb what they might have to say to me, whether they're sprouts or flowers, and giving myself, really enjoying the time to feel the wind on my face when I get to go outside. Those two things have felt like just absolutely nourishing, and I feel really grateful for the ability and privilege and situation I'm in, that I'm able to, like you were saying, Deirdre, go outside. I know Deborah, like many people, is very much apartment bound in the middle of the city. And then the other thing I would say is, as you know, as you brought up, we're all in this experience together, even though we are working through it in individual ways. Feeling the span of the crust of the earth connecting all of us has been a really major resource for me in terms of feeling like a grounded and embodied relationship with the species, the planet, the microbes, feeling all of us in an orchestra. And that's it.
That's actually a good segue to a piggyback question that I wanted to ask, unless you wanted to jump in right now, Brando, with your next question.
I'm really appreciating your interest and engagement, so go for it.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of draw attention to like the individual way that we're all forced to engage right now, and that forced isolation. I mean, whether we're quarantining by ourselves or with others, there's a way in which we're having to interact so much as a sort of separate self. And I'm just curious how all of you are paying attention to that and negotiating like that, along with a sense of trying to be connected and be in relationship with the world outside, whether that be other people or other non-human entities.
I think one response that I have to that, I appreciate that question, for myself, one thing that I've been experiencing during this time is because of the grief and the reckoning with a crisis that is both within our species and you know, the bigger climate crisis, is feeling like I feel exhausted in my performance of any type of projection of myself into the world. I feel like the energy that I maybe previously had to put up a certain kind of face or lead with some potentially false sense of knowing is really feels much more stripped away. And I feel excited within myself to experience that new, more naked and less constructed way of connecting with people. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I've been thinking a lot about neoliberalism, you know, just that. And how, you know, we're in this moment where we desperately need each other, but we can't really be with each other. Which isn't true. Like as soon as those words come out of my mouth, it's like, look at us here. In a certain way, I've made some really unexpected connections with new people. You know, there's all sorts of things kind of happening that might not have happened if we weren't in this position. But you know, neoliberalism, it casts us as individuals that are expected to do something that creates change. And it's tiring, and I think it goes a little bit to what Sophia is saying about this constant need to perform, be better, do better. Everything has to be better, better, better. And you know, I think that the kind of crisis feeling, the panic feeling that we're all feeling, you know, probably on some part of the spectrum, I feel like we've felt some versions of this before, whether it's a constant panic, depending on your socioeconomic status. It's potentially something that you might have received in a shock, right? Like September 11th, or maybe an election that might have happened in the last decade. But that there's a feeling for me that I want to come more towards like what I actually am connected to, like what actually exists without me having to do anything, right? Because what I noticed a few years ago is that, you know, after the last election, there was a lot of spring into action. And I just feel like I'm happy that we've had that cycle kind of experience, because then what I feel now is like, okay, we have all this empty space. Can we feel into the kind of grief and pain and sorrow, right, of whatever it is that's happening, and in all of its complexity, so that we can actually use that in our creative practices in the future. And so that being said, going back to the neoliberalism thing, I'm also thinking a lot about like what economic movements and what movements are happening in the world right now that we can join, right? That we don't have to act as individuals right now, but there's already movements happening that can fill this shatter, this change, and maybe create something new in the future.
Yeah, thanks so much, Deborah. Thanks, Sophia. Thanks for seeding this. I mean, I hear and totally feel all of what you're saying in my own life, the space, you know, that there's this space right now, and there's this delay, like in action, like that we all can't go into action right now. We're all being forced not to actually act right now in some ways. And so what do we do with that? It's like it's a deep moment of contemplation is how I feel, that I'm able to grow a new sense or a different sense of awareness, level up my consciousness, or like do the inner work that I never give myself the true time to do. And in so doing, not just for myself, but for all those, you know, that are maybe tuning into that same experience. It reminds me of I spend a lot of time outside, as I've stated, and in the fall, I really enjoy lying under the trees, you know, big leafy trees, and like just like watching the leaves fall as they leave the tree, and the like the tenaciousness, you know, and that they hold on to the branch, and then the moment where they release and the ease that happens as they drift, you know, down to the ground. And I get to witness this in the fall, and when I see this, I feel this sense of like deep peace, like of the like letting go, the giving into, that moment of like, I'm just gonna let go. It's the cycle of life. There's no holding it back. It's like you can't put a dam up against it. It's just what is. And that there's like an acceptance that comes up for me. And I feel like I'm drawing on that understanding a lot right now. That moment of like, there's this deep grief on our planet, and this acceptance that we need to just accept that that's what's happening. And how do we do that with grace? You know, or do we even want to? Is there a desire to fight against that? And I hear from, you know, even in Deborah's words and Sophia's both, that there's a desire for not fighting against that, to sit with it, just to sit in the space that's being created right now. And one of the things that I find that comes up in that space is just a hope that like a dream or a imagining of a world that could be different, and not knowing what that is going to be. Like, I'm okay with not knowing. I'm okay being uncomfortable and in the unknown, but kind of allowing my creative practice to just be about that, to just be about the hope of what could be, maybe, I guess. I don't know. I'm not trying to be super spiritual, but maybe it's coming off like that. But that's kind of how it feels for me. It feels like a moment of, I don't know, it could be seen as this terrible thing and also as this gift, this moment that we're inside of. I'll leave that there.
Thanks, Deirdre. It's really nice hearing everybody's, views, I guess. I keep thinking, because I think it's different being alone versus in a family situation. I keep thinking about, it's like fragmented whenever we was talking. I was thinking about all the first responders and the people who are delivering food and the mail carriers and the nurses and the farm workers picking. And it's interesting. It's like the big context to the little, and then in your little family, just like when I wake up some days, I'm like, I feel like, is it hormonal, or are you just, today you feel really low, but last week it was your birthday and you felt really good. So I'm just trying to be like, just be in a gratitude practice, in setting daily rituals of meditation and different other practices I have, trying to just like, if I'm feeling sad, to put on the music and like start dancing. That seems to really help me just to be in rhythm. And I haven't done a lot of Instagram live classes or things. I've just trying to do some dance parties with friends. One of the most satisfying things I did last week was organize a 30-minute Zoom for my family. People actually who we haven't really been in online territory. It was like several grandparents, they're like babies, and I tried to be mindful of like, okay, baby shark, like maybe it was more centered towards like children music, and it was really nice just for 30 minutes to hold space for my family in a way I'd never thought of. But I have been teaching dance my whole life, and I'm trying to be mindful of how I put music and the group and the time, you know. So that was really fun and really satisfying. And I was like, this work that I'm doing, grounded in anti-racism work, is like connect with your lineage, your family, do the work in the family. I'm like, dance is a place of coming together. I totally believe in that. And it's a place where we can be in rhythm with each other, or just celebrate, or just raise our heart rate. The value of dance is so important, in like fitness, you know, just during these times. So I was just thinking about how how I'm paying attention to and negotiating the need to interact as an individual entity. But I do feel fear, like when I go to the store, like to buy groceries, it's interesting watching the energy elevate in myself. That's like a fear. And I'm like, okay, just breathe in, the mask, the hand sanitizer, and just trying to, like, everybody's with a mask. And so we're all these different, you don't see people's identity as much. It's just, it's very bizarre. And yeah. There's a lot of actions too of people rising up to like organize for more equitable pay, unions, like different things I'm hearing. Like I'm an adjunct at Temple. There's dance folks in New York that are organizing a statement for presenters and themselves. And I was interviewed the other day by someone, and I just really appreciate people who are taking action, like Christina Wong making all these face masks and organizing a whole, she's a great performance artist out of LA. And I understand the need to take care of the self, but also there's so much happening, like you were saying, or I think Deborah, you mentioned that. Just like how can we support what's happening here? And I think dance and improvisation, there's so many tools that we can share in multiple spaces. So it's just like continuing to learn and listen and see how to translate and not be too hard on myself. Call my friends. Yeah, those are ways.
Yeah, I just gotta say super quick, like it's Earth Day and there's tons of stuff online right now about that, and how our government is really like pushing an agenda not to do anything around green movement. So yeah, it's interesting. Like the thing about action, like that there isn't any like action happening, but there's lots of actions happening. Yeah, I agree for sure. It's frustrating to not all be out on the street right now or in a gathering today. Yeah. Happy we have this.
Yeah, there was a, Brando, if you want to jump in with a question, feel free. Otherwise, I'll keep going.
I just want to make sure that we leave room for questions from people who are in the meeting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that's great. I think we have time for, yeah, maybe one more panel question. And then we can kind of open it up. And yeah, definitely people can even begin now to engage with the chat, and you can start posting questions if you'd like, or comments. Yeah, just this this thing that just came up around Earth, it being Earth Day and not being able to go outside, and what actions are happening right now. And I heard that yesterday there was a protest in Philadelphia, where you are, Esther, that like these protests have been starting to pop up in state capitals of people protesting the shelter-in-place orders, mostly Trump supporters, I think. But it's really, for me, like bringing up questions around who's visible, like who's being seen right now and who is not being seen. And yeah, I'm curious how each of you in your practice like finds ways to make things visible that have been invisible, or maybe the other way is necessary too, making things invisible that have been too visible. Yeah, I'm just curious about that that relationship.
Yeah, I think I want to just read this this little line of text that's in Mary Overly's book, and was actually written by Barry Lopez, who wrote a book called Arctic Dreams. I'm not sure that it really answers your question, but I think it might bring just a little bit of maybe information for those of you that are listening that maybe don't know what the 6 viewpoints are, and how it does kind of, how it works in a process of making things known. So the physical landscape is baffling in its ability to transcend whatever we would make of it. It is as subtle in its expression as turns of the mind, and larger than our grasp, and yet it is still knowable. The mind, full of curiosity and analysis, disassembles a landscape and then reassembles the pieces. The nod of a flower, the color of the night sky, the murmur of an animal, trying to fathom its geography. At the same time, the mind is trying to find its place within the land, to discover a way to dispel its own sense of estrangement. So that's Barry Lopez. And I love that because in the viewpoints, there are a couple of things that I think are really important. And if you want to jump in, Sophia, please. But yeah, it's this idea of deconstruction in that, you know, all of the things that we're connected to all the time, whether it's abstract or real, they're far more complex than we can possibly imagine. And so in the process of deconstructing, we can look closer. And I wonder if this, I've been thinking a lot about the economy, sorry, I feel it feels very out of place, but I think it's on a lot of our minds. But how can we start to know the economy? How can we bring into our consciousness as artists the depth of what is invisible and what we don't see, and then in that process also, just to bring it back, like, and then regulate your nervous system so you have more capacity to see more, to experience more, to bring it in. Because I mean, I think even in this panel, I think there are people that aren't represented, and I hope that in our call out for participants for these workshops, that we can figure out how to invite in and give as large of scholarships as we can to populations that actually maybe are more connected to the earth than I am, right? Because my sense of estrangement has been huge living as a white woman in Western culture. So just to how do we reclaim our indigeneity, and how do we reclaim all these connections, and how do we call in people that are already doing this and maybe know more than us, and we can collaborate with them in a different way. Right. I'm sorry to just like start talking and I don't stop. So if you want to interrupt.
Deborah, we're the same kind of person that way. Is it okay if I jump in really quick? Because I think that Deborah's bringing up something I'd love to float in and maybe connect a tiny bit. I've been using the 6 viewpoints for years as a launching for a lot of my improvisational work, and I use them now inside of the forced walks that I go on, and the land dance practices that I do, spatial relationship, listening, all sorts of things that due to Mary Overly's language, I was able to articulate more and more and more in my improvisational practice. And when I think of invisible, I think, oftentimes socially of like, bodies that are invisible. But what I'm also tuned into a lot lately is just the natural world, because I can't access it in the same way that I normally have. And how those things a lot of times people don't give the same importance to trees, you know, as we do to people. And I understand why, because, you know, people are consciously are moving around, you know, needing care in a whole different way that trees do. And at the same time, without trees, we can't live on this planet, you know, so there's a direct relationship. And so I guess I'm thinking about that inside of invisible, like what are we truly like, you know, aware of for our life to function. And I think of that in my own like practices as a site responsive performer. I mean, that's what site responsive to me is like, let me see. You're working with like the history and the architecture, the kind of the possibilities inherent in a space that you're in. So you're bringing to visibility what isn't always seen, whether that's out in the middle of the woods or in the middle of a mall. You know, it's both man-made and natural spaces. Site responsive isn't about, you know, only the outside. That's just what I like to practice a lot right now. And I guess, yeah, there's just kind of like a strong link for me around bringing to form, you know, bringing things to form, things that you can't see, yeah, readily. How do you bring those things to form, whether they're social, you know, political isms, or, you know, something that's just like a beautiful thing on the ground that everybody passes by that they never look at, or, you know, whatever it might be. So I'm just going to stop there because I'm just wandering into some place I'm not sure where.
There was one thing I also wanted to say that I think I didn't say, but you reminded me of it, is that in the viewpoints, there's this possibility that you de-center the human, that we become less important. And I just wanted to bring that up as that it's part of the process, and that can also make other things more visible in and of itself.
So we're going to turn now to some of the questions that people are starting to post, and feel free to continue sending those through the chat. Yeah, Meta would love to hear more about the workshops that you all are preparing.
Okay, I'll start. So Deborah and I are working on preparing a workshop that I think is really, I think I can confidently say will really be an attempt to work with this kind of deep physical, auditory, visual listening that the Six Viewpoints provides a framework for. A word that, as I was listening to Deirdre and Deborah, a word that kept coming to my mind in terms of decentralizing the human is restraint. So forwarding the experience of observation and placing observation as equal in importance to action. So I think, you know, our workshop, we're going to be discussing space, shape, time, emotion, movement, and story. And we're also going to be really practicing how we can restrain our initial creative urges to listen more deeply to the environment that we're in, or to any one of those 6 languages. And something that we've been talking a lot about is how that, and something that I think we're going to be focusing on in the workshop, is how we can shift a potentially narrow view of the future, of how we look at the future. Deirdre mentioned creating the capacity for hope and to dream about other futures. And Deborah has been sharing with me a lot of amazing literature on future studies, and how most, at least, from a Western standpoint, of where future is usually a narrative of progress or of an objective being reached, how narrow that is. And given that we're in a position where our future on planet Earth is very precarious, how can we start to pay attention in ways that nourish a much vaster approach and ability to imagine what could be happening next? Do you want to add anything to that, Deborah?
Yeah, I guess, thank you. That was great entry. Yeah, just to say that through encountering, letting these materials visit us, right, because they already exist, these 6 viewpoints, it's a practice presence. And the basic thing is that if we become present, then we open our future, right? We don't have to march forward towards a certain goal, but we can actually stop and pause, look around us, and realize that the present moment holds everything that we need to move forward. So that's what we'll be practicing over the course of the weekend. And it's basically, you'll be just getting so many tools and resources to do that, to continue to do that. I have found the viewpoints to be an invaluable resource in this moment, I have to say. So we want to give it to as many people as we can, basically.
And if I might add one more thing, I think another way of saying this is that in observing what's happening around us, what's happening on the planet, what's happening through these 6 languages, it gives us more potential to participate with what is already in motion, to shift away from the feeling that we as an individual have a solution, but that there's an emergent quality to healing and to the creative nature of the universe.
Yeah. Yeah, take the pressure off of ourselves, actually.
I went to the had to run to the loo. But I think the question, if I'm understanding, for us to talk about our workshops, is that what we're doing now?
Yeah.
Okay. So Deirdre and I have been doing this weekly practice where we call in to each other and we devise a score, and then we check back in, and Deirdre was in a state park. I was more of in the city, in a graveyard, in my home. So we've been trying to vision like what we can do to make sure the workshop is open to people who can go outside and people who are staying inside. And we've come up with a format of 2 hours over 3 days. And we'll have a grounding in. We're going to have some movement that I'll facilitate, and also meditation, movement meditation. And Deirdre also is a massage therapist, so we're going to do some self-care with massage techniques. And then we'll go into a practice that is facilitated, and then also some time to practice on your own, and then come back together to share what the experience was. Do you want to add anything, Deirdre?
Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks, Esther. So we're going to do 2 hours a day over 3 days, and the 2 hours that we'll spend with you are these practices that Esther was just saying, and then we'll be giving some things, some short readings to inspire, and some scores that you can do on your own, and then we'll be checking in about those each day that you come back. We tried to keep it at a smaller amount of time that we're online with you, so that you can spend more time doing the practices, perhaps after we've done some practices together, out on your own, and possibly in duet with somebody else that you might meet on the during the workshop. We're also very interested in having people there, just to have people there to experience things. So please, if you want to come and don't have the financial means, you know, we're trying to make it as accessible as possible, and to share with your friends about that as well. And I would just say one thing that's kind of a focus for us is just bringing environment kind of like directly into conversation. Yeah, so that as a performative practice, bringing environment into conversation, which, as you heard from Deborah and Sophia, also is a viewpoint aspect. So some of the tools might even cross over a tiny bit there too. And it's just a way, also doing site responsive work is a kind of, it's a form that allows us to just broaden our storytelling tools. You know, it gives us the opportunity to try storytelling from different places and perspectives and things like that. So yeah. I'll
And
just
we're
stop there.
also, oh, sorry.
No, it's
I was
okay.
going to add on just, we're both collaborators, so it's really interesting to, maybe there'll be some friendships that start out of this, of someone you didn't know, and maybe you'll meet them later. But just collaborating, because this workshop was meant to happen at Earthdance, and we hope, you know, eventually it will. But I'm excited for the kind of sharing that will happen also in pairs, to build a new friendship this way, in a creative process, which is, for me, what Earthdance gave me in different workshops, connecting to people and building and trust and radical tenderness, and creating communities of support and lifting each other up, and processing, and yeah.
Woohoo! It's so exciting. I'm so glad that you all are doing these workshops. So I'm going to read this question from Kristen, who asks, I'm curious about any pragmatic suggestions on how to collaborate from a distance. Also curious about thoughts around artistic energy sustainability.
Is that in the chat thing?
Yeah, I will. Well, Kristen, if you want to post that to everyone, you're welcome to. It was sent to me privately.
Okay. Yeah.
Can you read it again one more time? And do we have time? Because I see it's almost 1. Is that all right if we're going a little over, y'all?
I
think it's okay.
I feel like you also answered your question in your statement, Kristen. That you, I do love that you're saying about how you're thinking about, like also slowing down, and I think it's a tension, and I think people are mentioning that, and just being aware with my collaborators. I do have a group of people that I work with, and just we're having actually an increase in our meetings, and it tends to be administrative focused, but the time we did a happy hour and we drank, that was really fun. So like, how can we shift? Or maybe maybe I will suggest, let's draw together at, at the beginning of this meeting, or something that is more about caring for each other, and a different kind of practice, rather than organizing administratively who's going to write this grant, who's going to make that website update. So yeah, just to be tender with each other, that listening that Deirdre and I are talking about, like this active listening, this listening to really tap into the collaborators of like, well, maybe, someone might be having a death in their family, and just to be really sensitive to, I don't know, creating good things in a good way, creating goodness with your collaborators. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a great project that I'm a part of where we're offering like online group meetings. And basically it's just to come together with different artists that have worked through this project that I talked about earlier, the IDOC-DE project, which is the International Documentation of Contemporary Dance Education. And we're doing these, we were supposed to have this residency, and because we're not gonna be able to have it in person, we decided to shift the format. And so now people are meeting once a week or once every 2 weeks. And we have this specific practices that we're doing together, but there's also like almost the whole meeting is just about connecting and hearing where each other's at. And then we maybe spend some time doing some kind of, creative practice together, and sometimes that doesn't happen, and we're all okay with it. That was the agreement, is we're just going to work with what's the material there today, and if that means some processing or sitting and just listening to music, or that's what some people have been doing, is bringing some sound in. And yeah, to not box yourself in, or think you have to be super highly productive. I mean, I'm doing my best, but I'm failing a lot at being productive right now. But I'm really super happy about the things I do get done, and because I'm doing them in a way that kind of Deborah and Sophia have both been speaking to as well, where I'm paying attention, taking care of myself and doing that, not just plowing through the way I might normally have. I'm being slower about that process. So be careful, be caring with yourself around production in particular. And have fun. I think we really need a lot of that right now too. Yeah.
There's one thing I wanted to add. I so appreciate those ideas. I was just writing notes, and I'm excited to participate in some of those. And I think this is something that's really been helping me, that is not so much about collaboration, but I feel like it's a good preparation for me in my collaboration, and helpful for my creative energy, is just really, really taking a moment to root into the felt sense of what in my body feels healthy. So what in my body is looking forward to being called into action, what in my mind or my experience of the moment. And so really starting to get specific and curious about that feeling of health in this moment has really helped me in when I start to feel like I'm not doing enough, or I can't take yet another conversation, or I have this collaboration coming up and I feel completely underprepared, or whatever it is. So I want to just really encourage everyone to get cozy in celebrating whatever health is present. Like, what does it feel like?
Yeah, and I think the more I feel like Sophia is like expert at this, and I've been learning so much from her. But like how to be in the present moment with one another. And I used to do a lot of research on collaboration and what that actually meant. I kind of let that go in the last years, but of course it's still there, right? We still work with one another, but how can we start to be present with one another? And right now we have this interesting situation where maybe or maybe not, you have a goal or something you have to produce in the future, but there's an opportunity to slow down and really think about, does that need to be figured out right now? Is this still important to us, right? And I'll just say what I said before, but gathering the tools to regulate your nervous system is going to help you in that moment, because otherwise we can't read subtle energy, right? We can't read the subtleness of what's happening between us. And I've been absolutely amazed by what a little bit of nervous system regulation has done to the quality of my collaborations, actually. So that's what I have to add.
I like how Caroline asked the question about the go, and I was thinking about going into the go, and how really sweating. Like, I did a 24-hour dance marathon that a friend DJ'd. It was really great. My friend Justin Hoover did it, and there was DJs. It was quite an experience. And I didn't do the 24 hours, but just like trying to exercise and sweat, it was like, it's a different thing than slowing down. But that also was the endorphins, and it just helped my body to go faster, to exercise, get the heart rate up. I don't know if that's what you were referring to, Caroline, but I appreciate your comment.
Yeah, and a go activity action is really just nervous system nerd. But it's really good for discharging emotions, you know, and helping you to regulate. So it's not that you have to like be quiet and slow and be in slow motion all the time to regulate your nervous system. You actually need like many different practices to do that. So
Yeah, like how animals shake, you know, right after something happens to them, right? They shake and they shake and they shake until they've, you know, distributed that nervous energy. And we don't ever give ourselves that. We don't give ourselves the space to be like, oh, that totally freaked me out. Okay, I feel better, right? It really works, right? That sudden, quick energy. Totally agree with you.
I feel like my kiddo, because, well, she's 12 and she'll just like jump on me and like it's like some sort of reaction, like she's kind of inside a lot, but then just comes out in a very, like you're saying, Deirdre, like this, but she's a child, so she's just like all this energy that she wants to start wrestling and just needs to go somewhere with that energy. Yeah.
There's this really, I'll just throw this in because it's fun. Vivek Patel, who was one of my co-presenters in this weekend event that I just helped produce, he had this video online where he was doing contact with his couch because he hasn't been able to go to contact dances in a while. It was so great. It so inspired me, like, right, let's just grapple with some stuff. Yeah. Like to move that energy in some way. Super important to pay attention to. Thanks for bringing that into the conversation.
Wow, that's so great. Thank you all so, so much. This has been a really rich and wild conversation, and I so appreciate everything that the four of you spoke to and also everything that everyone contributed to in the chat. It's just so fascinating, and hopefully, you know, all of us picked up a little piece of how we might further adapt in this situation. So do take the opportunity to learn more about the workshops that are coming up, because they're going to be really juicy, and they're on our website, earthdance.net. They're called Forces of Nature, The Forces of Nature, and Tree, Land, Sky. And yeah, we'll keep connecting in all the ways that we can right now. So yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Lindsay. Thank you, hosts.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your Earth days.
Yes. Happy Earth Day.
anniversary.